were like, what, 350 at one point or so?
312 was my highest.
And then you went down to like 2...
No, it was like 158.
Oh,
my stage weight was 150.
Oh my God.
I didn't just like do cardio and eat better. Like I honestly trained way more than I did cardio.
If you're lifting weights, then you are sending a signal to your body like, hey, let's hold on to this muscle mass as we lose weight. Whereas if you're only doing cardio, you might be losing quite a bit of muscle mass.
I used to focus on fitness for the vanity, basic young dude like BS. And I never focused on like how I felt.
You lost a lot of weight, you got jacked. Was it everything you thought it would be?
That's a good question.
Does tracking calories, does it work?
There's some health outliers that people kind of make little of on social media, which is kind of annoying sometimes.
Playing a lot of pickleball these days?
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Like 5 years ago, I started playing it. And then recently I joined Lifetime. And Lifetime, like pickleball is like a big thing. And I liked it before. So I was like, good source of cardio. Started it just for cardio. And then I was like, oh, this is fun. I want to get better at this. Like I definitely have competitive nature. Like in PE class, I was always like trying to be like the best in PE, even though I was like a little bit bigger. But yeah, so definitely just like the competitiveness took over. And then also I just know it's like super good for me.
Just because someone's big doesn't mean they're shitty at sports though. I mean, I've seen, there's a lot of big dudes on Instagram and stuff like that I see doing all kinds of athletic stuff. And then, you have football players and stuff like that are really big. They're not like in the category of obese or something like that, but there's a lot of athletic people that are big that can move really well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Growing up though, that people definitely didn't think that.
Yeah.
I always got picked last. So
what sports did you play?
In Canada, there's not like, you don't really play sports.
There's
like
just hockey.
Yeah, but I sucked at skating. So I played a little bit of basketball in middle school, played some baseball with my uncle when I was younger. Played a year of soccer, kind of tried everything. And every sport I had something that I was like not great at. So I was like, I'll just like, I definitely like, if I'm not competitive, I don't enjoy it. Right. So for soccer, I just wasn't quite fast enough. For baseball, I was like afraid of the ball. So I would step out of the batter's box every time. But hey, there's me.
And were you always a bigger kid growing up? Were you like quite a bit heavier than a lot of other people?
So
how did it come to be, I guess?
Yeah. So
bless you.
Guys, this is going to happen a lot today. I'm so sorry. Just ignore me.
No worries. So I was actually like a pretty healthy kid up until the point where my mom got with my stepdad. He kind of introduced like I didn't really know what soda or like bad foods were when I was younger. And then like he kind of brought it into our life as well as he was also abusive to my mom. And so that combination of like, well, this is good stuff. It makes me feel good. And then I'm dealing with this. So as a kid, I remember like I would hear them fighting and I would just be like, where are the snacks? Where are the Doritos? Where are the pop? Like, shout out to Pop because I'm Canadian. Yeah. So that was the first time I started kind of like eating that kind of stuff and dealing with trauma as a kid. And I just slowly gained weight as a kid. And then I was always the chubby kid.
Yeah.
I wasn't like crazy obese or anything. Like I was always just like 30 pounds heavier than everyone. You know what I mean? But it was enough where people, noticed and would pick on me for it. Like some people talk about in America that they didn't get picked on being like bigger in school. I did relentlessly, like all the time. Yeah. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this, man, because like, when I started trying to make YouTube videos, that was around the time when I actually first discovered some of your YouTube content. You had a video that has almost 10 million views at this point of your transformation. Yeah. And you talk about IFYM and tracking macros in there. So you've probably helped potentially millions of people start paying attention to the food and then their macronutrients. Because you went from, in that video, you lost 140 pounds.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, man, first off, how did you get to 312 at that point? And then what was your process of losing the weight that time?
Yeah. So obviously, like I said, we were talking earlier, like very different than what I would do now and what works for me now. But initially the reason I gained the weight is I definitely experienced like a lot of trauma in my life. Lost both my parents when I was a teenager, dealt with abuse, a lot of drugs and stuff like that. Not me personally, but my parents were drug addicts. And food was my coping mechanism, like 100%. Like I remember like specific moments where, like, for example, the story I always go to that like comes up so like vividly is my mom was like, hey, I'm just going to go to the store, right? And, 24 hours later, she hasn't come home. And I'm like 6-7 years old maybe.
Yeah.
And what I would do is I would be like, well, I don't feel safe, right? And so I was like, I know how to cook myself food because I grew up really early as a young kid because I just had to. My mom was chronically sick, so even though she was around, she wasn't like the best caregiver, but she did her best with kind of the situation. But I would make myself like craft dinner or eggs, stuff that's easy for a kid to make. And I would just like get in front of the TV and watch movies and eat, and like until she came home, because like I didn't know what else to do. And so I just was training my body that anytime I experienced like unsafety or fear or anxiety, to just eat and to watch stuff. And so like a lot of that, I still love movies. Yeah. I'm a big movie guy. Go to the theater a lot, but also whenever I have that, and I mean, fear comes in your life in many ways, right? Like we experience it just in like everyday little stuff that we don't know that we're going through it, but we are. And so anytime that those things would happen, I would just turn to food and be like, oh, I'll just order pizza, or I'll just run through a drive-thru, like just get that quick hit and feel a little bit better and try and go along my day. But doing that over and over throughout my teenage years led me to, being 300 pounds. And I didn't really notice it until I developed sleep apnea at like 275.
Okay.
So when I hit that 275 mark, I noticed a change. I was like, something's different. Something's off. I don't feel good. I feel exhausted all the time. I was like, I need to do something, right? And I actually have sleep apnea again now, but I have a CPAP machine. I didn't when I was younger because I just didn't really realize I didn't realize it was that bad to have it and not deal with it. So I felt horrible. Missed like a half a year of school just because I could barely get out of bed. And I started a new job at TELUS, which is basically Verizon for Americans.
Yeah.
And I was working with a guy who was fit. Shout out to Brandon. He was just like, hey man, like obviously, I noticed first, but then we just had conversations about like, yeah, I want to get in the gym. I want to get healthier. I just don't know where to start. And so he kind of helped me get started.
Cool. And if it fits your macros was like in tracking macros, that was the way that you found success initially?
Well, this was 2014. So if it fits your macros was like everything.
Yeah,
It was if you went online to lose weight, like everyone was like, oh, this is the way. Like we've been lied to for years. This is the way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I can lose weight and eat burgers and eat sushi and like eat whatever I want. And so I was like, yeah, this is easy for me. And I was like young. And so like literally all I did was I would like go to work. Me and Brandon eventually became my roommate, and we would just go to the gym afterwards. We would cook each other's meals and stuff. Like he would tell me what to eat. And so the more progress I made, I was basically losing like 10 pounds a month.
Wow.
And I was
That's
like,
a lot.
Yeah. I mean, at that high weight, it's not crazy, but yeah, consistently, like almost like even when I started to get leaner, I was still losing like 10 pounds a month.
Wow. Okay.
So it came off, but one of the biggest things, which I think is why like some of these videos did so well at the time, is that like I didn't just like do cardio and eat better. Like I honestly trained way more than I did cardio. Yeah. Like I wanted to, like I definitely was like in the bodybuilding.com forums, I was in the mindset that when I'm done this, like I want to be like fit and big and like muscular and like, so it was
this topic is really interesting to me because, the type of exercise you do, it definitely matters from a perspective of like it's sending a particular signal to your body. If you're lifting weights, you're sending a signal to your body, and especially if you're covering yourself protein wise, then you are sending a signal to your body like, hey, let's hold on to this muscle mass as we lose weight. Whereas if you're only doing cardio, you might be losing quite a bit of muscle mass in the process of losing weight, which can then kind of mess up your metabolism a little bit. But I also think that it's important for people. I see a lot of guys, being someone that's powerlifted for so long and coached so many people in powerlifting. I see a lot of people like wanting to squat, bench, deadlift and do these workouts that take a really long time, and you're not really that productive in the workout. Do you kind of see what I'm getting at? It's like dude. You do a 5x5 of squats like that. If you start to build up any appreciable amount of strength, a 5x5 in squats with warm up and everything takes like 45 minutes, maybe a half hour, and maybe in some cases longer if you're training with a couple other people. And my point here is just that doing some of the stuff that you were doing, I saw you using dumbbells and machines and that stuff. You can get through 5, 6, 7, 8 exercises in like 45 minutes.
Yeah. And I focus way more on that now. Like obviously what works for me, is not what necessarily will work for everyone. So I'm never like, this is the way, but
You didn't even say that.
Iced tea over here. It doesn't explode like that.
Yeah.
So, when I was like younger like that, especially when I got to that level at social media, like that was literally my life and like my income. So like I was just in the gym every single day. And so it was easy. And so my training kind of was like, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well like just train long. And at that time also like the whole 5x5 thing was very popular too. Like, so I trained like that for a long time. And then when I obviously like later on in life had my daughter and stuff, like you just less time in the day. I was like, I want to be able to go to the gym and get the most amount of progress for the least amount of time.
Yeah.
And so at that time, we kind of talked about it earlier. Like I've been friends with Jeff Nipper for a long time. And I actually texted him and I was just like, hey man, like this is what I want to do. Like, can you just build me like a quick program? Like I'll pay you if you want. And he was just like a pal and just like sent me this like, hey, I wanted to test out this like style of training. So here, like do this. And so he basically just gave me a workout that like takes like 30 to 45 minutes, but each set is like you do some warm up, of course, but each set is like, I'm putting my all into it rather than just like doing 5 sets of like, oh yeah, talking.
Yeah.
Like I may only have 2 sets on some exercises, but I'm like giving it every rep, like maximum intensity. And I got the most amount of progress I've ever gotten in training from that style. And that's just for me, like I said, but my strength went up faster than ever. Like I was actually like feeling like I was making progress, like actually like excited to go back to the gym and everything.
Do you feel like all your training before that wasn't hard?
Yeah, it was lackluster. Like because when you're doing so many sets, like on the 3rd and 4th, you're just like going through the motion. Whereas like when you do 2 and you have like a certain amount, you're like, you do the weight and you're like, oh, I need to put it up a little bit because I could get definitely 2 more. You know? And so the way he structured it, I loved it. Got the most amount of progress. Now that's how I train. Like, so I'll go to the gym sometimes with the guys because a lot of the, like, I would say mass general public still follows like different older styles of training. So I'll go with friends. They'll be like, that's it. And I'm like, yeah, but like how we're doing sets are very different. Like
you got like 5 reps left, bro. I got 1.
Definitely. So I I'm always in support of like how people want to do their own thing. But when I train with friends, they're always like, that's all you do? And I'm like, yes, that's all I do. And I love it. Yeah.
Does tracking calories, does it work?
I mean, definitely. For the mass majority, I definitely think that there's some health outliers that people kind of make little of on social media, which is kind of annoying sometimes. But the mass majority, if you track your calories in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. Is
there potentially a different way you could have played it to where you didn't gain the weight back?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me personally, like it was a lot of the mental work. Like I spent the last year doing more mental focused work than I've done in my entire life. And in the last 3 months specifically, I've made more progress mentally than I've made in like 10 years of my life. And it's all because like, one, I chose to like surround myself with people who like are focused in that area of mindset. And then also like every day, the amount of effort you put into like your training and nutrition, like we all talk about how mindset is such a big part of it, except it's like 5% maybe of the battle of the actual like effort you put in.
Yeah.
So like people say like it's 80% of the work, but then we're putting 5 to 10% of it as our main focus. And so for me, like I knew that I have all this trauma as a kid and I've used it as an excuse for a majority of my life. Like I recently kind of like had a moment in a group. One of my clients I work with, he has like a mastermind, and I opened up in that mastermind. It was just like I let like trauma like run my life for so long, and in the last months, I've had the most progress because I've just realized like that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. That's not who the future me is. And so I just started putting consistent daily work into like visualizing the future me, affirming those things, and doing the work, you know, that I hadn't been doing for years because I thought it was either like, oh, it doesn't make sense, or oh, it's hippy dippy, or whatever you want to say. And then I started doing it, and you realize, oh, this this shit works.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of application of that, how have you found versus what you were doing before? How have you found it actually really shift you? Because I think some people, you know, they know about the mindset stuff. They know it's important. They never take action on it. And then they're in this hamster wheel of the same shit, right? So how specifically are you going about it?
Yeah. Before I get into that, I will say, of course, nutrition still delegates the progress, right?
Absolutely.
So the way I approach my nutrition now versus if it fits your macros, I focus way more on quality than quantity now. I just realized like the years of like, and I know there's science behind like, you know, sugar-free, for example, being fine. And I do, part of me does believe that, but I just started to notice like what actually agrees with me. Like, I don't care what the science says, what agrees with me. And so I went to basically like an animal-based approach for like a couple weeks. And I just to see like when I reintroduce foods, like what, because I have always had gut issues, like for majority of my life. I thought it was just like a norm. And then cutting everything out and going to like bare bones and then reintroducing stuff, I was like, oh no, that's what makes me not feel great, or that's what bloats me, or that's
what kind of stuff did you notice that you like?
Nightshades, I can't do nightshades.
Okay.
Yeah, like peppers, onions. I love them. Every time I go to Chipotle, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's always the way it is. So what you love, you can't have.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And but it literally like from like I introduced it, and it was like immediate bloating, immediate like it was the only thing that I'd had in like a week. And so I just knew that like, okay, that's just something that like I can, when I maybe choose to be like, oh, well, I don't care right now. But in the majority, it just doesn't agree with me. And so I basically went, and 90% of my diet basically consists of like meat, fruit, and rice. And then I do a lot of fruit, and I focused on fiber fruit because I realized that like you can eat whatever fruit, but if you don't eat the fibrous source ones, then you're just getting low fiber because you're not eating a lot of vegetables. But I'll do broccoli once in a while too, just because I love broccoli.
You love broccolic.
I do, dude. It's to me like oil, salt, and pepper on broccoli or like olive oil is like
okay. Maybe I need to give it a shot.
Olive oil, salt, pepper, bake.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, so I didn't cut out like every single vegetable, and that's like for the majority of my life. But before I used to say like, oh, 80% of my diet is like whole foods. And I was lying to my fucking face. I was lying every day, man.
It's like you ate the whole pack of Oreo cookies.
No, because I just, you know, what I used to do, you know, because the whole argument around what's whole was like so skewed like years ago. And even now, there's still a lot of debate, but I'm like, what is good food? Like, what do we know truly deep down, even though we want to look at, have these different arguments, what's good food?
I got to interject just for a second. There's the famous coach, Dan John, and he does seminars and stuff like that. And he'll talk about nutrition, and he'll lay out what you should eat. He'll say, you know, I think you should eat meat, fruit, and vegetables. Hand will go up, and someone will say, what about rice? And he just goes, hand across the face. Someone's like, what about milk? He's like, hand across the face. Like, he's obviously not hitting anybody, but he's saying like, look, you idiot, I just gave you the recipe. I just told you what to do. And now you're giving me resistance to it. And so I think that happens a lot. I think as soon as we say whole foods, people want to sneak in a bunch of this stuff that's kind of like peripheral that's on the side that might not be a whole food.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I saw the trend online. I was like, yeah, I don't know about all of this. And there's some people that are really good. One of my favorites is Carnivore Ray. I think he's one of the best in the carnivore space to just talk about it like it really is. Like, he doesn't add all this craziness to it or make it seem like it's the only way. Like, he's like, I don't give a flip what you do, but this is what works for me. And it's cool. But I followed that, and for like the 2 weeks, like that first week I did it, I was like, like the whole mental clarity thing, all that kind of stuff was like top. And so, yeah, you can make the argument that like, oh, you just cut out a bunch of stuff. Now you feel better. But it's like, if I'm doing that and it's working, and then I can adjust from there and find what really works for me and actually like have a baseline to make those decisions. Because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So many people feel like shit and they just think that's just normal. And I did for so long. Right. And so it's like, now I know that, oh, when I have this, I feel like crap. And it's not because I just feel like crap in general. It's because I just ate this.
Yeah.
And so, so now just 90% of my diet comes from that, truthfully. And then, well, when I'm on track, of course. And then the 10% is like, once in a while, I'll fit some stuff that is like off, but.
You know how to cook too, right?
Decently.
Like, you're a little bit of a foodie, right?
Well, I'm definitely a foodie. I like to cook for people, not for myself. Like, I like the gratification of like making something good and like seeing something like, oh, dude, good job, you know? But actually like cooking for myself all the time. The air fryer is my best friend.
Yes.
I'll throw a frozen steak in the air fryer, 20 minutes, good to go.
You just go do something else, come back.
Yeah. I'm all about efficiency for sure. Especially now, like being around the business world, like just your time is so valuable. Like I used to make that as an excuse to like, oh, well, I'll just eat out. That's time saver, but also money waster. But I can do the same at home with,
Time is an interesting thing. I think Joel Green has come on this podcast before talking about how most fitness things don't work because the fitness influencers are talking about stuff that just takes way too much time. We just have time to like mess around with our diet. We have time for recovery, for cold plunges and red light therapy and all these different things that normal folks they're not going to spend the time doing it, even if they could make time to do it.
It's like, how long is your morning routine?
Yeah, it's tedious, right? Like the morning routine's 4 hours. Like you're gonna wake up at 3:30 and not get your sleep and so on, and it can be ridiculous, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think for someone like yourself, and you mentioned this has happened to a lot of other influencers that lost weight and then gained it back. It's like they lost some weight when they were younger, when they maybe had less responsibilities. But as the responsibilities grew, I know you said you have a daughter and you have a business that's outside of the fitness industry. And when you have all these other responsibilities, and not to make an excuse for you or anything, but you have commitments that you're responsible for. And it just makes everything a little bit tougher. Not saying that you can't do it, but it throws a monkey wrench in everything.
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's a night and day difference, but really what it comes down to is it forces you to prioritize what is at the most importance, right? And so for me, like when, part of me truthfully is like, so go back to the mental stuff, right? Like I think I spent a lot of years not feeling confident. Like I felt confident in me, but not confident in like the deep me. And what I mean by that is like, I spent years not being able to trust my own intuition because like I just would make mistakes all the time and I would choose the wrong thing or I would make impulsive decisions. And I've always struggled with ADHD for the majority of my life. And so I've just always thought like that was the reason for this. And I would use this as an excuse like, oh, well, I have all this trauma. That's why I did this. And, this is just the way I am. And I was like, when I started working with that coworker I was talking about, not the coworker back when, but recently, the last 3 months or so, I moved out to the East Coast to work with him. And that was one of the major reasons. Like when I was around him, he wouldn't, like I would talk to him like I would talk to my friends and I'd be like, yeah, this is why I struggle with this. Oh, I want to do that, but I have this. And he would just be like, nah, dude, like I don't accept that for you. You shouldn't accept that for you. And he didn't do it in a way that felt like just criticism. It was
what did he help you with in terms of like what is true? Because there's got to be like, we can say, hey, look, childhood trauma doesn't make every person obese. Like we could say that, right? But it's probably going to leave scars, and it's probably going to resonate somewhere and show up somewhere in someone's adult life. So when you work with this mental coach and you start to kind of lay out some issues that you've had, what does he accept?
Well, accepts that it happened, but then like your choice forward is your choice. And so like for me, I was constantly in that voice of this is why I am who I am, not what can I do to be the person I want to be. And so it was just switching that. It wasn't negating or forgetting the past. Yeah. It was just, what are you focused on now? Mm-hmm. Like if you're waking up every morning remembering, oh, well, yeah, I want to stay on track today, but I feel anxious. And when I feel anxious, I eat bad food. What are you going to do? Like, you're going to do exactly what you think. And so it literally was just him not accepting it for me made me realize that like, okay, I need to do something. And so I was like, when he offered me a position locally to him, I was like, if I can be around this guy every day, there's no way I won't level up. And in the last 3 months, it's been like literally like night and day. And so as you guys know, like beginning of the year, I was like at my highest weight, most unhealthiest I've ever been. And in April, I decided to start a GLP-1. So I started taking tirzepatide compounded when it was like off the overproduced list or whatever it was, or shortage list. So it was easy to get, and now it's not so easy to get. So that's part of why I'm choosing what I'm choosing to do now. But a lot of it is that, so I was on that. I fully think that like where I was at the time, like without that, I don't know if I'd be where I am today, almost 50 pounds down.
Yeah.
But it was and always has been a goal for me to like, I'll use this as a tool and then get to a place where I can do this on my own. And so doing what I've done in the last 3 months with the mental work, I was like, I really truthfully believe if like, because right now every other day I'm doing like my affirmations. I'm doing like self-hypnosis a few times a week. I can tell I can tell you, it's basically like meditation. Like Andrew Huberman talks a lot about like that 10 minutes of like focused breathing and like, it's similar to that, but a little bit different. You kind of utilize it better.
Okay.
But I've just been doing this stuff like a few times a week and seeing insane change in like just my everyday focus and like what I want and like how easy it is to like slip up and like make choices. And I was like, if I do this every day, put the same amount of money I'm putting into getting a GLP-1 into it and like actually focus on that, I'm very confident and I can see my future self fucking doing it of like, I can do this with the mental aspect being a main focus. And so that's what I'm transitioning into now. I still have some GLP-1 left, so I'm like tapering off slowly. And then, just putting all that effort back into the mental stuff that's been changing my life. But the self-hypnosis thing is basically just a brief meditation, like getting just into your zone. Like you can do it listening to something, you can just do it on your own. And then I got taught at that mastermind I was at by this woman named Sandra Grace. And she's worked with like athletes and stuff in the past and like has like a whole track record. And I don't necessarily believe everything within this space, but the stuff that has worked for me, I'm like, okay, it works for me, you know? And so it's basically like, I'll self-meditate, get deep in the thought. And then when I'm at that zone where like you almost feel like you could like go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's where like your subconscious, that's where it like lives, is the thought behind this. And so at that moment when I'm in that space, I'll like lightly like think about moving my fingers. And every time I move my fingers, I'll speak the affirmations into my head. Like, you're healthy, you're strong, like you're determined, you're confident, like you're going to do this.
Yes.
And I do that. Like I've been doing it once every few days. Eventually I want to do it like twice a day, every day. And not only has it helped with the affirmation stuff, but also like with my ADHD brain, it feels like I have way better focus as far as my brain just doesn't feel super scattered. Just taking those times to like relax, breathe, calm my mind, and put that effort in. And then like most people will just do that and just lay in that or kind of sit in that 10 minutes of just Zen, but utilizing it to like fill your mind with what you want. That's what I've been doing. And it just, to me, I wake up, it's hard to forget, you know, what your goals are and what your motivation is when you're constantly reminding yourself of it.
Yeah.
Like I've always known that people like writing in journals every morning, but for me, it's like, well, if you do it in the morning, you do it in the morning. You have the whole day ahead of you, right? So like in those moments of like, oh, I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling like I want to just go grab a burger, I'll literally take 5 minutes. I'll be like, okay, like get into my zone. No, you got this. Like in those moments, I turn to that meditation and just being like, no, like this isn't you.
I'd be worried that I'd have my hypnosis voice would be David Goggins. I'd be like, what the hell? Just settle down. Trying to chill. What you got, Andrew?
If you're someone that's taking supplements or vitamins or anything to help move the needle in terms of your health, how do you know you really need them? And the reason why I'm asking you, how do you know, is because many people don't know their levels of their testosterone, their vitamin D, all these other labs like their thyroid, and they're taking these supplements to help them function at peak performance. But that's why we've partnered with Merrick Health for such a long time now, because you can get yourself different lab panels like the Power Project panel, which is a comprehensive set of labs to help you figure out what your different levels are. And when you do figure out what your levels are, you'll be able to work with a patient care coordinator that will give you suggestions as far as nutrition optimization, supplementation, or if you're someone who's a candidate and it's necessary, hormonal optimization to help move you in the right direction so you're not playing guesswork with your body. Also, if you've already gotten your lab work done, but you just want to get a checkup, we also have a checkup panel that's made so that you can check up and make sure that everything is moving in the right direction if you've already gotten comprehensive lab work done. This is something super important that I've done for myself. I've had my mom work with Merrick. We've all worked with Merrick just to make sure that we're all moving in the right direction and we're not playing guesswork with our body. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at merrickhealth.com/powerproject. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save 10% off any one of these panels or any lab on the entire website. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes. This video right here, I'm cracking up. If you're on the audio side,
Yeah.
So it's Danny kind of almost mimicking a photo of him looking jacked and shredded. So my question for you is, so you lost a lot of weight, you got jacked. Was it everything you thought it would be?
That's a good question. I would say like yes and no. So the funny thing about this photo, I did compete in a men's physique competition.
Awesome.
Back in 2017. It was an awesome goal. Didn't do it great. The reason it's funny thing is like, if you look at that photo, about 4 weeks prior to that, I looked way better. And it's because 4 weeks out, I had like my first ever real binge. Like I literally spent like 24 hours where I was like, could not stop eating.
And then you filled out.
And then I texted my coach at the time, which was a good friend of mine. And I was like, dude, I fucked up. Like I'm up like 12 pounds. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. It was 4 weeks. And so he was like, okay, like, and in my head, I'm like, social media, like I could not fail in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Like, you just tell me what I need to do and I'll fucking do it. And so I spent the next 4 weeks eating 800 calories, doing 3 hours of cardio a day and training 6 days a week to get to that. And I probably lost like, probably 80% of that weight was probably like muscle. Cause like I remember looking at myself like 4 weeks out and I was like, dude, I looked so much better.
Yeah.
But it was cause I just wanted to be lean enough to be on the stage to like look somewhat like I'm meant to be there. Cause I obviously had loose skin. So I knew I was never gonna like win or anything. But I was like, I want to look the place. And so we just did whatever I had to do to get that. And that was my choice. Like my coach wasn't like, oh yeah, you got to do this. It was like, no, I'm going to do this. Cause I just couldn't. My mental spot at that time was very, very overconfidence, ego, and like letting everyone else dictate what I did in my life. Like comments, social media, like I would just listen and I'm at a point now where I don't give a shit. And truthfully, like I know a lot of people say that, especially with social media. Like I don't care what people think. So like obviously the odd comment will get to me, but like it used to dictate my life. Like I no longer allow anyone else to dictate my life. And not from an ego standpoint, for my health, like I need to know me and be able to push and do what I need to do. So
Yeah. So what did it feel like though?
the day of doing the show felt incredible. It was amazing. But then I dealt with binge eating for like a year after that, where I was like, and I rapidly gained again. And that was kind of the first major regain was after that. But yeah, I mean, like I used to focus on fitness for the vanity aspect of it. Like I was like, I want to just look good. You know, I want to be able to like, you know, flirt with girls I never got to in high school. Like, you know, basic young dude, like BS.
Yeah.
And I never focused on like how I felt or my mental health at that point. Like, and so it was all just like going in the gym and then what's going to do well on social. Mm-hmm. And it didn't lead me to a great place. I didn't feel good. I wasn't dealing with any of the, life stuff I had to deal with in my brain. And so eventually at, 25, 26, that all caught up with me and I had some work to do.
Well, I think, in that picture, you look like you belong on a stage, like you got yourself in very good shape. But I think one of the hard parts about trying to be on social media and trying to, be known for like, you lose weight and try to get this particular physique and so on. When you're lumped in with everybody else, I think a lot of the criticism would be like, well, it doesn't matter that you're 230, you still don't look that great. Like that would be the conjecture from a lot of negativity that you have from people that are following along with the journey. And that probably makes it difficult because you're like, what the fuck, man? I did all this work. I went from, you were like, what, 350 at one point or so?
312 was my highest that time.
312, and then you went down to like 2...
No, it was like 158.
Oh,
my stage weight was 150.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I got real, like I said, it was not ideal. But here's the thing though, like you're saying, like what really messed with me and I anyone who does like a show that because so I did this at the time where it wasn't a popular thing. Yeah. Now it's a popular thing. Sure.
And especially kids, especially younger people lifting and everything. It wasn't popular in 2014.
Yeah. But especially with like I think WBFF has one, and Summer Shredding was probably the most popular.
Yeah.
They have a whole transformation division that is built kind of around bodybuilding style, like judging in a way.
Yeah.
I could have a whole conversation on that. Honestly, it's riling my gears, but maybe mention that later. But yeah, so it wasn't like a popular thing, and I wasn't ready for. I'm 160 pounds. Now I'm 180, still very healthy.
Yeah.
Still very lean. Oh, dude, you look super fat now. Wait, what? What? Like, I would, every 5-10 pounds I would gain, dude, your face is like filling out, like, hey, keep it together. Like, and it was constant. And every 5-10 pounds, like, dude, and then I was 200 pounds and I felt like the most obese I'd ever been in my life, even though I'd previously been 300 pounds plus, because like, when people see like shredded to normal even, they're like, oh, what happened? Mm-hmm. It's just like a mind fuck. Like, and so people who do these competitions now, I have a couple of friends of mine who have done them, and I'm always like, make sure you are prepared for what your brain will do. Because if you are not, it's going to be extremely difficult. And I've had some, oh yeah, I'm good. And afterwards they're like, oh shit, this is some of the worst I've felt ever. And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
And you will. And even people who don't struggle with their weight, like regular competitors. I remember I was in Toronto. I was at the Toronto Pro Show. I was with an IFBB pro who was training. And me and him were like talking. And I was like, we have very similar struggles, like mentally. But you look the way you do. And I look the way I do. And we went and like ate food. And he was talking about like it was literally like very similar mindset.
Yeah.
To like.
In terms of trying to just stay lean for him.
And also like dealing with the struggles of food. Yeah. Like he doesn't let it go as far as I would, but the mindset around it of like, we ate like a bad meal together and he was like, oh shit, like tomorrow I'm going to wake up with a little more fat here on my abs. And like, oh, it's, I really beat myself up. And I'm like, dude, look, you're an IFBB pro. Like, what are we talking about? Mm-hmm. Like, but yeah, like, this whole mental aspect around food and like your body image and stuff, it's way more similar in these extremes than you'd think. For sure, 100%.
Oh, yeah. So I'm actually curious about this though too, because you were focusing on the way that you looked, right? And then you changed the people around you. Have the people around you, has that just changed your self-talk and how you look at yourself, or what's it done there?
I think the self-talk honestly was just over time. Like even before the mental focus stuff, like I got to a place where even though I was as big as I'd ever been again, I had more of a confidence in who I was, and that didn't dictate who I was. Yeah. Than when I was younger. When I was younger, I was like, oh, I'm a fat piece of shit. Like, and I got to lose weight. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like, I'm unhealthy, but I'm a fucking awesome dude. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And not to like make that as like a scapegoat, which definitely sometimes you do. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of make, we were talking earlier, you can rationalize every which way, this way and that way to like make it okay with being where you're at. Yeah. But I no longer that was one of the first kind of mental hurdles I overcame, was like, I just no longer let my like physical dictate who I was. And so, that was a little bit before, but then the, being around like the people I've been around definitely has helped shift like some of the little stuff of it. Like, yeah, I can be confident in who I am, but also really want change because I want to be healthy. I want to be a healthy dad. Like I want to be, this is who I want to be. Mm-hmm.
Now, a second thing there, because earlier you were talking about good foods, right? And there are people who don't like it when people say that this is a bad food and this is a good food. These processed foods are bad foods. They think that makes people build a bad relationship with those foods. Yeah. Now, I'm of the mindset where like, yeah, we can eat this stuff, but we got to understand it's not good for you. Mm-hmm. Right? We can't look at it like a Snickers is an apple. It's not the same thing. What do you think is missed when it comes to communication on that on both sides?
Honestly, being a parent, I would just say that like I agree with that wholeheartedly when you're a child. Like with my daughter, we don't talk about good food and bad foods with my daughter, but she has never had a problem with overeating like both me and her mom did when we were younger. Mm-hmm. She knows it as growing foods. The good foods are growing foods. Like, hey, make sure to eat some more growing foods. And then treats are when she wants to have them. And it's like she has one and she self-controls on her own. And most kids, I think, if you do it well, of course, you're going to have outliers of people who just naturally have a disposition to eat more or whatever. But like she's never had an issue with, and she eats like we were just talking about yesterday. Like she probably eats better than 90% of kids, just because we give her like really like part of the reason I work so hard is so I can afford to give her like really high quality foods. And
so she inherently understands that self-control that a lot of adults lose.
Yeah. So like I think a kid growing up, that language should be thought about. When you're an adult, you're an adult. And I think that it becomes a defense. Like, oh, I don't want to hear about that because it, triggers me or whatever. And I'm not saying that people don't have real triggers and issues that they deal with, but like I've spent majority of my life avoiding triggers and like making it so that I had to fit in this little box and be safe and it was killing me. Like it was for me, like it was absolutely like holding me back from everything I want in life. And it wasn't until I stepped out of that and I started to live with some of the uncomfortable truths that broke me out of that I'm going to rationalize everything. I'm going to stay away from what doesn't, serve me, and to the point where like you actually start to put effort into things that actually protect your energy in a good way rather than just protect your like
your beliefs.
So I think I would say just kids, I think that's valid. But as you grow older, I think we know deep down, like even if you have like very little knowledge, I think it's easy to know like what, go to a grocery store, it's on the outside, like that's a old school way of thinking, but it's true. Like, like all the good stuff's on the outside.
And with kids, at least the parents can kind of regulate, what's in the house.
Yep.
The 5-year-old's not driving to the grocery store.
It was worse for me than it was for her because she would like not eat her, nuggies or whatever. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to waste this food. So you know how many extra calories you eat as a dad or as a mom or as a parent? Like
nuggies.
I think Andrew earlier was asking, how did it feel? And then we brought up that picture of you, competing, but just like, how did it feel in general to lose like 100, 150?
Yeah.
Or what's the most amount of weight you lost?
It was 140.
140. So just like even losing
something,
like 80 pounds, 100 pounds. Did that make you feel good, or you didn't have time to enjoy it because you kept going lower and lower and stuff like that?
It honestly, like, I just don't feel like I felt way different, way, better. Like I could move more. Like obviously I was way like overall better in my health and I felt that, but it's hard to look back and like truly appreciate it. Where now, like I'm only down 40 pounds, but like the amount I feel different in this 40 pounds I've lost now to me is like, and it could be just like the moment in time, right? But it feels way more like I can really feel and see it than when I was younger. But yeah, obviously it was night and day different, but it was just like mentally though, like I definitely dealt with like still feeling overweight for a long time. And especially during the show situation. So it was physically obviously felt way better. Mentally, I felt more confidence and I could put that on, and had that better feeling day to day. But deep down, I was definitely like still struggling a lot with stuff.
I'm curious about this, man, because you mentioned that you're switching from you're slowly tapering off the GLP-1s. And we've had somebody that's come onto the podcast recently, Dr. Tina Moore. She is all for it. And some people would actually think like that she's for it a little bit too much. Then you have other people in the fitness industry who are like, oh, no, this is, they're not building good habits. And why are people doing this, right? Where do you land on its use? Because it can definitely help people move in the right direction. It can help, silence some signals that are just going crazy in their mind, right? What do you think about it?
I've always, we, I don't know if you guys know, but we have like a podcast where I have a co-host that's had weight loss surgery. Okay. And so it's called like Cheating on Fat because it's like I was taking a GLP-1, he's had surgery, playing into the game. But
that's I like that.
Yeah, but one thing we always talk about is like if people can do it naturally, that's always the best way, no matter what. Like why would it not be? You know what I mean? GLP-1 really is like the new tool, like weight loss surgery was way back when. Yeah. Like it can help people get started and it can be a life-changing, drug for people. like surgery can be a life-changing surgery for people. There are pros and cons to both. And at the end of the day, depending on, you know, like I am thankful that I've been able to put myself around people who have like changed my mindset and are helping me work on that. Whereas not everyone has the availability to do that, right? Not everyone has that, the money or the time or whatever. You know, I'm very blessed with my business. So I look at it like that, where the majority, I think, you know, or not even the majority, there's going to be different groups of people, like people who can do it without it. And there's going to be people who can only do it with it. And there's people that can maybe use it as a temporary tool, which is, I think, that where I fall into.
Yeah. And
at the end of the day, though, like, just like with everything else, I think when it comes to like medical decisions for yourself personally, this is just the way I feel. It's like, do what you're going to do. You know, I think you need to weigh out all the pros and cons of it. Like, I think a lot of people jump into it just like, whatever. It's like a supplement. It's not a supplement. It's a drug.
Yeah.
You know? And I think, people just need to take the bit more time into figuring out if it's right for them or not. But then from there, I just think it falls into different groups of people. Like, I think some people need it, some people don't, and some people are going to use it as a tool. But I think the final goal for everyone should be, if it gets us healthier, truthfully, right? Because we don't know a ton of like long-term effects on some of the ones. And I don't know if you guys know this, but like in the next 6 years, there's like 16 more weight loss drugs that are probably and most likely going to be coming out. That are being tested right now. So none of them all will make through the FDA and everything.
Yeah, and
but
some
like,
of them will be pills as well, which will change the game rather than people injecting.
But there's literally like 16 currently in development in the next 10 years. So like what you think now is like, oh, it's not even going to be like,
Honestly, I think this is mostly positive.
Yeah.
You know
No, for sure. But I think where it's going, though, is going to be very interesting for sure. Because, you know, there's just new drugs being formulated.
Shit, what's that movie with Demi Moore, that new movie that's out? Solution. It has the
Substance?
Substance.
The Substance.
My girlfriend can't stop talking about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah, I watched it. It's
a body
you saw
horror
it?
movie.
Oh, yeah, it's wild.
It made me disgusted. I'm still thinking about it. You haven't
gross.
seen it, Danny?
I have not. I saw Terrifier 3.
She wants to see that this weekend.
But,
The Substance was horrible.
yeah, no, I'm. That's one it's on my list to watch for sure.
It kind of, I think, runs like a little perpendicular to like GLP-1s almost, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to change who you are, but you like,
Yeah.
gets pretty drastic.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, like if people can,
Movie's wild.
It's nasty.
the trailer is great too.
Is it like kind of like a Black Mirror type?
Yeah, Black Mirror on crack.
Oh,
Yeah. It's the grossest movie I've ever seen.
The titty coming out of the eyeball.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Can't give it
body horror, right? Yeah. Body horror is rough
Yeah.
because it looks so real.
It gets worse and worse and worse.
I can't deal with that stuff. I can't watch like the pimple popping stuff that people watch all the time. It's like grosses me out.
chicks love that.
It's like, have you seen Candyman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a classic that they remade recently. I had to struggle with that one because when they had like all the beehive, like oh man, what was it called? Tryptophobia or whatever?
Yeah. Look, Andrew just passed out.
So when you said beehive, my oh dude, I got tears coming.
Sorry, my bad.
But she was hot. Honestly, in this movie,
God,
she was so hot.
She's unbelievable.
I think
You're a great
her
actress.
husband did like an interview and was talking about how like guys
Gotta
will
get
come
my
up and be
mind
like,
off
dude,
of
good
this.
job. And he's like, thanks. Like, what do you want me to
They just like give him props.
yeah, like it was funny at first. Now he's like, it's so common. It's like, am I an ugly dude? Because like, I feel like, you know,
Just give him a fist bump.
yeah, good for you, man.
Didn't see that coming. Like,
yeah.
wait, what?
Shooting up in the world. That was great though. But yeah, like I definitely at the end of the day, what I would want for people is like whatever they need to do to get healthier, that's always the good option. But if people can do it naturally, or if people can have the goal of being a temporary to fix all the other stuff, because I truthfully believe that mindset and environment is like 90% of why people struggle with this stuff.
Yeah.
If you can work on that stuff, I think that everyone's capable. I know. And I wouldn't have believed that like 8 months ago because I was like, I've tried everything and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the mental stuff, man, it's for me, because especially with knowing what I've been through, like it should have been easy for me to tell, but like just normal therapy, it helped me, but it didn't get me anywhere for me personally. And
Normal therapy?
yeah, like just talk therapy, right?
Yeah.
Like it definitely helped, but it wasn't switching anything. Like it's all about talking through it and you know, once you realize that it happened, that's great. But they don't their common therapists won't teach you like how to get to that next step.
So
right?
that's quite interesting. What you've learned from, I forgot his name, the guy you're currently working with.
Oh, Mike Sjogren, yeah.
Because it seems like it's there's an aspect of therapy there, but what you learned there wasn't just what happened, but you learned how to make a switch, like to speak to yourself in a different way. That's the big thing.
It's speaking to yourself in a different way, and then also just visualizing and having clarity on who you want to be.
Gotcha.
And like making that an everyday focus.
Are therapists allowed to do that for people?
Probably not. Yeah, I like I said, like I wasn't me bad talking therapy at all, but it was just like I reached a wall and I was like, what do I do from here? Because like I honestly thought that like psychedelics were going to be like the only answer for me, because I was like, I have all this trauma. I'm trying because the biggest thing I've ever struggled with in my life, and it's one of the main contributors to me being separated from the mother of my daughter, is I was just defensive. Like the way I lived and what I got through, like I got through that by just being like defensive all the time. So in arguments or like in different things, like I'd always just immediately revert to being defensive. And like my boss, when I moved there too, would like notice it and he'd be like, dude, like, it's okay. Like, you know, it's just me. Like he could see me getting worked up. Yeah. And I've struggled with this for my life. And I was just like, this is just who I am. Like just something I'm going to have always to deal with. Or if I'm going to have to take like a psychedelic to try and like reprogram. And one of the best books I've read that very much changed that was Extreme Ownership by Jocko. It opened me to just realizing that like people don't care nearly as much as you think they do. Like I used to go out of rooms and be like, if I said something or did something off, that's all people are going to remember about me. Like if I said something weird and they're like, you know, you get that reaction where you say something didn't land with everyone. Yeah. And they're like, okay, like weirdo. And I would be like, oh, I'm weirdo freak for fucking life now. Like, cause that's literally how my brain would operate.
I got a bunch of stuff written down here. I'm gonna talk about it and leave.
And that's how my brain would work. And so I would just go in the defense. And so when it came to weight loss, like I would defend myself and like just stay safe, like be defensive. And so working through that ability to like just accept things how they are and not get defensive. And I still struggle with it, of course. But like I said, the last 3 months, I've made more progress in the last, decade or two of my life.
I heard this recently, and it's not about how good you do on your best day. It's how bad you are on your worst day. And I think that's really good advice for people that are trying to go through some of your journey with food, and you mentioned the word switch, and I think that's really important. Can you switch out your sugary soda with a diet soda? We can get in arguments about diet soda and all that stuff, but we have to kind of start with just these small little baby steps, small incremental things. And so maybe you get rid of some stuff that you like to eat in the morning, and you trade it out for eating a frankenfood, like a tasty pastry from like Legendary, like a protein forward type of thing.
Pop-Tart.
Yeah, exactly. Protein Pop-Tart. Like you're starting out the day with something slightly different than what you were doing before, but it's not like you're changing from having a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich to having Greek yogurt with some blueberries. Because like your typical person that has struggled with their weight, they're gonna be like, "Fuck you! I don't want to eat that.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound very good." And so you have to try to find options that you can switch. That you can literally just switch. Has that been something that's been kind of helpful for you in your journey, or is that kind of a slippery slope too? Because if you kind of open the door to getting certain tastes, it might kind of open up the floodgates. Yeah.
For me personally, like when I was younger, like that's how I lost my weight, was just switching things. And I still do that on occasion. Like just making that like healthier choice, even though it's not the healthiest. I think that's where the money is like not that I always have to choose like some weird alternative that's going to do it, but also just knowing how to make that discernment in what like it's going to get me the closest to what I want, but for like the least amount of damage and most amount of protein and good things.
Like a cheeseburger from a fast food place, fries, chocolate shake. Maybe you just do just the burger.
Yeah. Or
something
even
like
just
that.
like the burger with like another sandwich of grilled chicken sandwich. Like
there you go.
Just like swapping out stuff. And I think the knowledge of that is super important. For me now where I'm at, like when I was younger, I didn't care about how I felt or the overall health. And now that's like one of my main focuses. And so for me, like it's getting to the point where I know I'm going to feel like crap if I have something. So like that influences a bit. I'm just making it so ingrained in my mind that like when I choose something, I'm like, oh, do I want to feel like crap tomorrow? Do I want to not feel as good on the pickleball court? Do I want to not feel as good in the gym? Like those things are now what I kind of think about. So I try my best to, it's honestly a very much on and off approach. Like I'm either like 90%, like I said, or I'm like, today I'm going to have what I want. And like, not where before where it'd be like, I'm going to eat as many calories as I possibly can. Do a 10K calorie challenge in my apartment on my own. But actually, you know, just have a meal, feel good about it, and then move the fuck on with my day. You know, I don't beat myself up after having stuff. Like that was another problem I fell into, was like you'd have a bad meal, beat yourself up, be like, oh, today's gone anyways. I'll start again tomorrow. But if I'm going to start again tomorrow, I better have all the stuff I want now, which is pizza and this and that. And I'll go get a Ben and Jerry's or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like especially if you're doing that like repeatedly, like if you're on for 6 days and then off for 2, you're going to do way more damage in those 2 than you are in the 6, as far as like good versus bad and calories. So yeah, for me, like I do follow more of like I'm either eating meat and fruit and like sometimes rice, or like I'll do pho, which is like rice noodles and meat. I think it's one of the most underrated like healthy foods.
I'm getting some today actually, man. It's a cold day. Gotta get some pho.
Oh, dude, I'll never cut pho out of my life. And then like simple switches, like I swapped any like bread for like homemade sourdough, or like the best sourdough I can find locally. I swapped like some meats for locally grass-fed. There's a farm north of me in Maine that I order from. Nice. Similar price to like what a grocery store would be, but way higher quality. You know where it's coming from. So just like little stuff that I can control, right? I might not, and I used to be super science approach. Like I'd be like, if it doesn't have data behind it, I don't want it. And I was just like, what is going to help and like work for me and like have possible pros, but no cons? And it was like eating grass-fed. Like there's no way that's, you know, it's going to maybe not have a crazy amount of stuff like some people online talk about, but it might just be good. So why not?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just not as black and white as I used to be with things.
And tracking calories sometimes can be, I mean, you can fall off no matter how you try to diet, because there's so many pitfalls. But sometimes when people are tracking calories, they want the convenience of having something that's super trackable. I realize now we have apps and stuff, and there's a lot of good technology where you can type something in and it auto displays it, and you can click on it pretty quickly.
Now.
Yeah, you can take a picture. Like it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The way that it has advanced. So but sometimes when people are tracking, they're like, oh, I'll just eat that Rice Krispie treat because it says it on the package what it is, and you just end up eating a lot of junk.
100%. And like I said, for me, like you just don't realize that how bad you feel eating that because it's just normal.
Yeah.
Right. Like I when I talk about this stuff now, it's like at the end of the day, do whatever works for you. I don't care. I used to care. I don't anymore. Like literally, if something works for you, do it. Don't let anyone tell you to stop. As long as you're like obviously keeping your health and mind as the main focus and you're achieving the goals you want to achieve, do whatever you want. But if you don't know what you want and you don't know how you feel, like get a baseline, like cut everything out, figure it out for like, do it for like, it was 3 days until I noticed. And then, you know, some people, there's Whole30 was like a huge, you know, trend a while back, which cuts almost everything out. But like, I don't think you have to put that much craziness into it. And I think, you know, some people obviously have to be careful with what they're doing, which is why this is just like, this won't work for me. But try it. Like try a week of like just eating like meat or meat and fruit, and then slowly be like, oh, well, I like this food. Let's see if I introduce it. If you introduce it and you feel like crap, okay, good to know. You know, you can then make the decision you want to make from there. But without knowing, you can't make any decision.
You're trying to get healthier and you're probably eating chicken for every meal or the same beef cuts for every meal. And trust me, I know how good some cuts can be. You can make anything taste good. But Good Life Protein is the place that you want to go if you want to start adding some different types of meats into your rotation. They got picanha, they got chorizo sausage, which is still great on the macros because they're using Piedmontese beef. They have lobster. They have all different types of fish. They have actually a bunch of different types of chicken too. They have lamb. I'm telling you, if you give it Good Life a shot and try some of their different meats, which are still great on the macros, you'll start to appreciate the things that you can get from different meat. Don't think too hard about that one. But check out Good Life because we're sure that you're going to love the taste and the quality. And it's good for your health. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at goodlifeproteins.com, and at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 20% off your entire order. Or if you want to save even more, use promo code POWERPROJECT to save an additional 5% off your Build-A-Box. Again, goodlifeproteins.com. Link is in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
And what you mentioned there is so very important, doing that stage of creating some distance between these other foods, because even I feel it when I have like a lot of sugar or something, right? The next day I will feel inflamed. I will feel like my joints will feel a level of soreness where I'm like, I didn't even work out that hard, right? But it's because of how I react to high amounts of sugar. And I know, like, if I'm doing this, tomorrow I'm not going to feel the best for maybe a day and a half, right?
I know I'm eating like crap, so I have eczema on my hands. If it's bad and cracked and inflamed stuff, I know I've been eating like shit. I have lower back pain that if I know that is like it makes it so it's hard to walk or like do like pickleball, for example. Like I'll do a game or two and I'll be like, oh shit, like I'm in a lot of pain. That's how I know I'm like, oh, I'm not eating great right now. Cause I don't like, it doesn't like fix it 100%, but like it's a drastic difference. Like my back pain will be very manageable. And then my hands right now are like pretty clear. You know, so if you ever, I'm like, oh, I'm doing really well, and you all of a sudden see me all sucked up, Danny.
Your hands are behind your back, or in your pockets.
Don't look at my hands.
So in the gym, we were kind of breaking down that scenario of like you have your goal in mind, you know exactly what you need to be doing, but you're in the drive-thru and you're losing this battle of what we called the fuck it's, right? You're just like, F it, I'm gonna go all in, and I'm just gonna get everything that I wanted. Even though you have all those goals in mind, can you walk us through what that's like when that other side of your mind is like taking over and you're just like basically kind of tapping to, you know, this submission and you're going to go all in? And then after, if possible, if you can kind of help us out and guide somebody in like trying to either avoid that, or when that scenario comes up, here's some advice on how to maybe navigate that thing. Because you talked about like some swaps, you know, especially in the drive-thru. I think a lot of people don't understand. You can swap things out, still get the flavors and all the fun stuff you want, but it's like just have 2 hamburgers instead of hamburgers, fries, and a drink or whatever, right? Yeah. So I know it's kind of like a 2-part question, but I just think for me, it's really fascinating to know that like somebody's on this warpath and they know exactly what they need to do. Holy shit, they're back in the drive-thru again. What happened?
Yeah. So I'll start with preventing it, obviously, and it's just been the mental work. Like when you're constantly reminding yourself of your goal, it's hard to forget it. Yeah. Right. But when it's not on the front of your mind, and when you're like, and you have to make it a front of your mind, it's not there when it needs to be. Right. So like when I used to go to the drive-thru, I literally would forget all that shit. I would forget about the dad I want to be to my daughter. I would forget about the way I want to live my lifestyle. Like I would forget all those things. And now, like almost like the minute I pull up, I'm like, hey, this isn't what we want to do.
Lay off me, I'm starving.
And sometimes like I literally, the other week, I pulled in to like a parking stall before the drive-thru and I did the meditation and then I drove the fuck out.
Let's go.
Because I was like, I can choose to give in to what I feel right now, or I now know I have another option. And I'm not saying this is going to work for everyone, but figure out what works for you. Figure out that thing that works for you. That it, like a lot of people talk about discipline, right? You can only have discipline when you actually have a choice to make. So when like you're in the drive-thru and there isn't a better option to what seems like the best option at that moment, then your body's going to go, this is the option, go do it. But now that I've given myself a clear out, right? That's where discipline really comes into play, because then you're like, I have an out. And sometimes I'm going to choose not to do it. But without that out and that thing I know I can turn to, you're giving yourself no option. There is no discipline to build because you're not giving yourself 2 choices. Yeah. Right? Like just doing or not doing is like not enough, I think, for most people to be like, I know I should just not do this. Like that's just, you know, so give yourself some way of an out or a reminder, and it can be like a song that you go to. Like be like, oh, I can put my song on that reminds me of where I want to be.
Like, it's like you're setting up your trigger.
Yeah. And just like give yourself an alternative. And then hopefully that gets you to a mental place where you're like, you know what? No, I'm going home. And so I've gotten to the place where that's for me. But even then to the swaps, like even sometimes I'll go through one of the benefits that, you know, following a little bit of this animal-based carnivore stuff is like, instead of getting a whole nother burger, I'll just get the patties and just get the meat. Right. Like, and it still is satisfying, you know? I try to only stick to McDonald's and Wendy's because they have like better meat options. Yeah, a little tip for.
Yo, I actually need to go try that because I haven't had McDonald's in a while, but McDonald's meat has always been so good.
According to the FDA, it's 100% meat.
You can trust the FDA.
And it's only salt and pepper. You know, isn't ideal, no, but I think if you're making that swap in that scenario, I think you'll be all right. But yeah, so like I just a lot of the times now I just skip the bread now just because it's just like habit.
Yeah.
I just know it doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't, of course I want it, but like I have enough other choice to make in my brain that I can go to that now I just like, oh yeah, I don't need this. I'll get an alternative or I'll just skip it altogether. Depending on the day, we have our good days and bad, but even on my bad day now, like what I always focused on is like, if I can make my worst days slightly less bad over time, I'm going to win eventually. Right?
Yeah.
Like right now, you maybe like a bad day is 400,000 more calories, and then it's 3. Well, then it's 2, and then you're having way less bad days than more. Like that's all wins, right? Yeah. Especially for someone who's struggling with their weight majority of their life. Like those things should be like not used as like, oh, now I'm gonna go celebrate, but like, hey, I'm doing this shit. Like now he's got to keep going. So, but then if you do it, I think it's just like. A lot of people fall into like, oh, well, I made a mistake. I'll just focus again tomorrow. But like I said, like if you haven't given yourself another option, then like it's just going to be a continued cycle.
Yeah.
So rather than just be like, oh, I'll just start again tomorrow. No, do something. Like there's more that you can do than just starting tomorrow. Like give yourself another option. Give yourself a more positive in the moment thing that you can go to and make that as daily habit of as for you as everything else that you're doing to get to the healthier version of you that you want to be. Like even if you did like one less set in the gym, but you focus that time on like doing something mental, I think would be insane for people. Like it's crazy to me that we don't focus, like we talk so much about mental health and like we need to build each other mentally. And then someone's like, hey, do you want to like meditate or like focus on your brain for a second? They're like, fuck no, get away from me. What's wrong with you? Like, you weirdo. Like, no, I want to go work out. I want to go eat meat. Like that's all great stuff.
Yeah.
But if our brain is so important, fucking work on it.
Well, and we're spending so much energy too. We spend a lot of energy. We're trying to reduce the energy that we consume. And then you don't have energy to do the mental work that you need 100%. To do.
And it'll give you more energy.
And I've been talking about this for a really long time, psychology and reinterpretation and trying to have equanimity, a good balance of your mind, because when your mind goes up and down like this, your decision-making is going to be more sporadic. It might not always lead you to overeat. Maybe not everyone is obsessed with food, but I know for myself, I mean, I'm a binger. Like I probably just basically recovered from binging quite aggressively maybe about 2 years ago. So I've been hammering food for a long time, and whether I was 330 or 220 when I was younger and stuff like that, food has just always been like on the front of my mind. What I found for myself is it's interesting how in the morning time, I mean, maybe this isn't for everybody, but I think most people do pretty good in the morning. Most people seem to be able to sort of manage their morning. I also found for myself and for other people that I've helped lose weight that falling behind is really brutal.
In calories?
Falling behind, not necessarily in calories, but that could be brutal too, because if you
I fell into that for sure.
If you're not getting your nutrients and nutrition, it's going to make you hungrier and going to make you have more cravings. But falling behind in terms of your hygiene, your taking out the garbage, dishes, laundry, add up all these different things, and you're in sort of like a hectic environment as you're talking about, and then you don't have time to prep your meals. You don't have time for this or that. You don't have time to shop. But if you stay ahead, you get your shopping done, you get your food in bulk, you get your food at reasonable prices that work with your budget and all these things, and you have things planned out, it makes it easier to follow the plan. And then you can actually drive by the fast food place and just be like, that's not even a place that has the right food for me. I have it at my house. It's already defrosted. It's already ready to go. And it gets easier to make those decisions. But, for myself, when I was powerlifting and stuff like that, I was telling myself the same lies. I was like, I need to get bigger. I need to get bigger. And it was for particular goals, but it also just got completely ridiculous and got completely out of control. And I would do something like, I would say, oh, well, maybe, you know, Friday I'll eat a little bit more, but then that turned into Saturday, and then that turned into Sunday, you know, and it turned into a whole big thing of chaos.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
I was gonna say to go off that, like, as your life gets busier, like this stuff just becomes way more important because you need to be able to like delegate and prioritize. And if you don't have that in like, that's the thing. Like, if you don't have this stuff in motion, then everything else is 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Like making the choice to eat good or to go to the gym or whatever, like is so much more difficult when your mental is like, oh, I hate like that I have to get up, or I have to, I have to stress about this that I have to do later. And those are all real things. Like right now I'm the busiest I've ever been in my business for like last 3 years, and it's stressful, and it's definitely like it's taken my overall like goal setting down. But I've realized like, oh, I got to focus more on this mental stuff because that's where I'm slipping right now. You know. So
the first excuse that people make is they don't have enough time, and then some of them will also say like, oh, but I don't know how. But like you just said, with an air fryer, it kind of takes out both of those, right? So the next thing though is, it costs too much to eat healthy. Can you talk about the difference as far as like budgeting and costs in regards to like what it costs to like eat quote bad to quote eating healthy?
Yeah. That's tough, especially because today's election day. So I'll start by saying this because I grew up very poor, right? Both my parents were drug addicts. Like I grew up with very little. And now being in a place where I have a great living, I do recognize that when everyone says they don't have time, it doesn't mean the same for everyone. There's some people out there that legitimately don't have time. They're working like 3 jobs or a single mom, whatever. There's people out there that really don't have a lot of time and don't have a lot of money. Yeah. And I think that first, just like addressing the fact that does exist is important. Yes. Which people just roll over like, okay, yeah, sure, buddy. No, there's people that really do have that.
Yeah.
But that's a very like, maybe not very, but it's a small percentage. So the people that even have that like a little bit extra, whether it be time or money, it's just like, it's kind of just going back to like the swaps. Like do what you can while you can. And then hopefully, ideally, over time, whether it be you get a new job or things change in the world, you know, then you can slowly make better and better choices. But you have to take with what you have. Like I know people, you know, you take 2 different people who are the same, but different focuses, like they might be able to achieve completely different results.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the day, it just goes back to like, what are you prioritizing? And if, you know, like there was a time in my life where I didn't budget at all. And so like, oh, I can't afford, you know, good foods. Meanwhile, I'm spending like $2,000 a month on fast food. Like, what are we doing? You know, especially depends on the types of diet you follow. I think a lot of people overspend. You know, you think you need all of this stuff where like literally could just be like, okay, I'm going to get eggs and toast in the morning. I'm going to have a rice bowl and protein in the lunch. And then at dinner, I'm going to use that same protein with potatoes instead. Like, and you're done. Like, but we want the low fat this and the package this and the alternative that. And those are all expensive. Like anything packaged or convenient is more expensive. Right. But especially people starting their weight loss journey, all that convenient stuff feels like a necessity.
Yeah.
Right. So it's tough. It's definitely hard. But I think it just comes down to like, you know, not to go back on that old cliche, you know, saying, well, if you want it bad enough, if you want it as bad as you want to breathe, like you're gonna do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to figure out a way to make it happen. And I've heard better messages of that same idea in other things, but it really just comes down to like what you want day to day, and are you actually working towards that?
Yeah.
And if you like at some points in my life, I was trying to do it. I didn't truthfully want it. And I can look back and know that. At the time, I was like, no, I do. For sure. I 100% do. It's like, nah, I don't know.
You know, there's a side thing, too, that really doesn't get talked about much either, is that the food is casting a vote for your self-esteem and for you in a very particular way. It's also like shaping your brain and distracting you and keeping you in that circle and keeping you in that cycle, keeping you in that wheel. That's why for myself, I've always really loved the idea of lower carbohydrate diets, keto diets, carnivore diets, things like that, because I think that it gets people out of that. Instead of being in this wheel where you continually eat these like kind of shitty foods, you're in this wheel where you're continually motivated to eat the right foods. And it just puts your mind in a very people talk about like brain fog and all these different things that they experience. And a lot of times it comes down to their nutrition. And I don't think everyone can be cured by a keto diet. A keto diet has its own flaws, and so does a carnivore diet.
Yep.
But I think that some versions of that, and as you're mentioning, like eating meat and some fruit and some vegetables, I think that's where it's at for most people, especially most people that have already previously struggled. Most people that have, they're just, food is on their mind a lot. They have a lot of like food noise because you get to eat a lot. You can have omelets, you can have some cheese, you can have some bacon, you can have maybe some fattier foods, fattier cuts of meat here and there. And it's not gonna mess you up, because in a lot of these cases, you're not even necessarily tracking or counting the calories. So sometimes when I look at some of these diets, I like to look at them and say, like, what works? But then defining what works is really hard. Because you could say like, oh, this diet worked. I lost 50 pounds when I was doing it. But then a lot of times people gain the weight back. So the diet worked while you were using it and while you were following the plan. So the actual diet works, but then it wasn't sustainable for somebody afterwards. And so I also am a fan of people going from one diet to another, like trying different things. And I know Nsima's mentioned that he used to track his macros. I don't think you don't track anymore, right?
I've tracked since like 2017.
And I think practices like that, I think, make a lot of sense. I think it makes sense for someone to either start out low carb or start out tracking or start out with some sort of conscious thought of exactly what they're doing, to have a plan to help them to reach their goals. And then maybe at some point they can learn about other ways to be healthy. They can learn other things about nutrition. Because I've always liked to try to come from the quality side. Like if you're eating quality foods, you're not going to have to worry about it as much. If you're eating these quality whole foods, they're sort of they're not always self-regulating, because we know we can eat these things. If a challenge is put our way, we can out-eat these things. But for the most part, it seems like a safe bet for a lot of people that have struggled previously.
Yeah. Like I said, my good friend John, Obese to Beast, is a good example of like someone who's just been able to do it. And he's one of the few. But for him, like, we always talk about the differences we have. Like he's not a foodie at all. Like he could care less like what restaurants he goes to or when he travels. Like,
I don't understand those people.
Like he likes it.
I don't get it.
It's not like a focus. But for me, like if I go somewhere new, that's all I'm thinking about.
Me too.
So, that's an aspect and difference of like,
these people are real. He's not lying to you.
No, it's like the same things every day. I just struggle with that, So, up until now though, I always try to say that after I say I struggle.
There we go.
Like we have different things that we're good and bad at, right? So for him, that's easy. For me, it's not. So like I have to adjust differently than he has to with his journey. So it all just comes down to like, I just look at it like, that mental aspect, right? The knowledge that you have, then the adherence, and then like everything else, like then activity. And then, it's like a rung of what's important. But I think like knowledge, your focus and what you're focused on and what you want. And then the adherence to what you're doing is everything. And that'll change over time. Like I said, like if a macros worked for me when I was younger, it doesn't now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's your favorite shitty food?
It's probably like most common probably is pizza. Like, or just
all
like,
right, that's great. Andrew, is that pizza ready that we got?
Oh, yeah. I think Eric's bringing
Put it on the
actually.
table and all three of us would be like eating and talking about dieting at the same time.
That's the one thing though,
Melty
like
cheesy.
the tough thing about pizza is it really is one of those ones that like you either have it the way it is or like nothing else compares. Like you can make a pretty good healthy burger at home.
Yeah.
And you can make a healthy pizza, but it never hits the same. I've had some healthy burgers I've made for myself. I'm like, oh dude, I'm good. Like we're golden. Never made a macro-friendly protein pizza.
All this shit that's made out of like cottage cheese nowadays. You're like, cottage cheese pizza? You're like, I don't know about that.
And also pizza is one of those things that like is so person to person. Like I don't think another food is like it. Like you can talk to someone and be like, oh, this place is the best pizza place I've ever had. Yeah. You go in there and you're like, that's the worst pizza I've ever had in my life. Like it's the one food that like everyone has their own particular thing with it. So that's why I think it's just like I don't want to say because it's so basic, but it's probably my.
It's bread and cheese.
Yeah.
How is it so
But
good?
some people like it thick. Some people like it thin.
Yo, I need the box to literally be oily. I need the bottom of that box to be
pan
wet.
pizza.
Bruh.
Pizza Hut? You like
Pan
Pizza Hut? You a
pizza.
Pizza Hut guy?
Pizza Hut's okay.
Okay, that's what I think of when I think of oily pizza.
They do have nice oily pizza, I will say.
Yeah, you need that like orange oil.
Yeah.
Just
like
do
coming
that.
out of the cheese.
Domino's pan, that used to be my go-to when I was like,
Shit.
yeah.
don't need to
Still
add
once
this
in a
to
while,
the
and I'm
list.
like,
That's why you
I
get
wanna have a
the
bad-
mushrooms. They absorb that orange oil for some reason, and it just makes the cheese like a little bit brighter white. It's so
Straight to the
good.
gullet.
no, but like,
It's burning your face the whole time, but you can't stop
Cannot
eating
stop.
it.
Roof of your mouth is like caving in or caving down.
but dude, I made so with some sourdough, some of the grass-fed beef that I have, and some like raw cheese the other day. I made like a patty melt basically.
Oh, okay.
And just used mustard and not ketchup. And it freaking was fire. Like,
There we
you
go.
know? So like, yeah, like once in a while when I'm like really wanting a burger, like I'll make that instead, you know?
There we go.
Do you
And
track it all
sometimes
anymore?
I'll probably track like once or twice a week just to see where like I'll eat the same for a few days, judge on progress. If I'm making progress, we're good. But if I'm like stuck, I'm like, what am I eating? Like, where am I at right now?
That's good. Awareness.
Yeah.
I always
Just
thought it'd be a good idea for people to track the shitty food that they eat.
I did that once.
Like
And
only track the shitty food that you eat because who
See-
cares about your fucking broccoli and chicken?
I started a vlog one day where I was like, I already know I'm going to do shit. But then I was like, if I put this out, people are going to be like, oh no, you just did this for the video. And I'm like, how do you balance it that you're like, no, this is real, but I'm showing it to you like I'm making a choice each to sit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was like, no, this would be like the most truthful account of like what a overweight person does when they're like, just like, yeah, fuck it. You know, like you said. But yeah, I was like, how do I do this where people just won't be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, yeah. So never put it up. But but yeah, I was just like every time I made there was a few times where I do have a few clips of me where like I knew that like change is coming. And I was just like, eat a burrito. I'm gonna change soon. And it wasn't like a good burrito. It was like bad for you.
All right. I want to know this, man. What is your beef with the transformation category?
Okay. Oh, I don't know. So I won't name any names, and this could get brought up, and eventually it'll be a thing I have to deal with. But the space, just like, you know, bodybuilding for a long time, like politics come into play. So I have someone of knowledge to me that has dealt with some politics in that scene with the weight loss division. But then two, it is what it is because I feel confident enough to be like, I just don't agree with this. Not that this person is a bad person or anything, but so they just had world championships of that. And in
that specific category in a show?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, in the weight loss division. And the guy who won, amazing transformation, but he's openly about TRT, peptides, and everything in the weight loss division, right? So he won, and the guy in second was a guy who's in a wheelchair who lost like 100 pounds in a wheelchair. To me, like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, not that like it's where it's like a gray area, but like, not to take anything away from the transformation with other assistances, but if we're judging a weight loss division, a transformation division, and we're highlighting and putting the winner on as basically a bodybuilding show, what are we doing? I don't know. It didn't sit right with me. And I saw a lot of people in my space being like, oh, congratulations, like hard work. Yes, definitely. Congratulations. You did really hard work.
I understand. Like the most improved on the team could be the best player, but they never get the most improved.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. It just
It's not right.
It didn't sit right with me. And like, to me, it's like there's a video that he did with Will Tennyson. I'll just say it. Simon LaFontant, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I'm not positive.
Okay.
I haven't done a ton of research. So this is me, like, this is like the shade room now. No, but like I said, Simon, if you're watching this, I think your transformation is amazing. I just, as a person who's like been in the weight loss industry for so long, I just don't think that the person who should win should be like, there's a clip of him literally saying like, why would I be natural when I can be healthy? And so this is not this video, it's the other one, the extreme 140 pounds. But so yeah, go to extreme 140 pound weight loss.
That's an odd quote.
third one?
That's
Yeah.
nothing against this guy either, but that statement in and of itself, I don't know.
It's his journey. Like I have no judgment, but when we're putting it, it's like similar to like sports, right? Like when we're putting everyone into a sports category, into a weight loss transformation category, respectfully, I just don't think it should be what wins. Like, leave that for, he also won the open bodybuilding.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, hey, amazing work. Like, that's not what I'm taking away from. I'm just talking about it specifically in a weight loss sense. To celebrate the weight loss, celebrate transformation. Should it be the number one in the show that's focused on a transformation? It doesn't sit right with me. But,
Yeah.
What kind of heat did you get when you start? Because you gained weight, lost weight, back and forth a couple times. What was that like, being a social media presence, being somebody that, did compete, that did step on stage weighing, what'd you say, 150 something?
Yeah.
And then once you started to gain weight, what did that feel like?
Well, I was coaching at the time. So I've naturally just stopped that because I was like, people would always say, like, how you coach people when you're overweight. And I don't necessarily agree with that mindset.
You literally stopped coaching people?
Yeah, eventually.
Wow.
Because I was like, I'm not in a good place. Like, so it doesn't make sense for me to like try and do this. And like I said, like when I've been talking about all this mental stuff, like this is not me talking about this like I'm any sort of close to even like a noviceman. Like I'm working on this currently with myself.
Yeah.
But one of the things I believe in is that like you kind of, not in an ego way, but in a confidence and a humble way, work towards and talk like you're the person you want to be. You know what I mean? Like Jim Carrey has this famous quote where he talks about how he was a kid and he really wanted a bike. And he puts out in the world like, I want this bike. I saw this bike. He envisioned himself having this bike. And then 2 weeks later, he came home and the bike was there waiting for him. And he was like, what the heck? And he's like, oh, my friend put me in a raffle and I won the raffle and got a bike. And he's like, from then on out, I put out into the world what I want and work towards it like it already existed. And that's how like he basically like made it to Hollywood and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like he lived his life like that. And so like that's what I try and do. Like I try and be like, I'm not there yet, but I'm living like I'm becoming like this person that I am is right here and exists. And I'm just working towards that person. So like not like I know everything, but with stuff like, like this, like, I don't know, it's kind of just part of the process, part of the industry. Social media is a wild place, but
did you want to disappear a little bit? Like,
I did for a few years. Yeah.
You disappeared from social media,
but it was,
from YouTube.
I also had, like I said, I had a huge ego, and even me like bringing up that, like, I know that's going to, I don't usually talk about any, like, this is fairly new on my mind today. But I try and kind of just keep to myself because social media can just be a constant back and forth.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, it's like the industry and the side of the social media that I've spent so long in, it's just, it's in a very interesting place, And so, I think we just need to like realize what we're putting out there and what the norm is. Like I said, nothing against him, but if you go to his page, like there's a bunch of peptides like that he's selling that can tighten your skin and can do this and that. It's like, dude, there's just a point where you have to choose what you share and what you don't. You know what I mean? Yeah. For the greater good of who is following you and who's like listening to you. Because the fact about people who are trying to lose weight is a lot of people are in a place where they're looking for anything. Right?
Yeah.
GLP-1 is within that range of a peptide. I think he was on one, possibly. And I believe that is like, that's a regulated like thing. Like we have research at least show that it does work and it's like, there's doctors behind it. Just putting out a bunch of peptides is like, you should take all this stuff because this helps me recover. This helps this. Like in that video, he goes through like, he takes 9 syringes a day. I'm like, what are we doing? like this has always commonly been like a bodybuilding thing. And now all of a sudden it's slowly working its way into weight loss. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It just really didn't vibe.
There's a lot like, no, what you're saying has a lot of validity. And I don't want to speak to anybody's specific experience because I can understand the want to use a lot of that stuff. But one of the things is like you mentioned, like, how about everything else that's as important to this? Like, it's not just the drugs. Yeah, maybe they can help, but what's going to be the thing that can get you there and allow you to maintain that for the rest of your life without potentially having to pin something all the time? Yeah. Have the ingrained habits set, right? And
it's a weird, and I will say like, it's not just the weight loss industry, like even in the wealth industry, like just you're not on peptides? What do you mean? Why are you not optimizing your, like that's becoming like almost like a part of like the
mental optimization.
Yeah. Because like, oh, well, like you have all, like it literally like, we're going back to the why I first found you with Bigger, Faster, Stronger. Like that really is happening again with peptides. Like people are like just taking it to take it because why not? Not knowing like down the road, like we don't like BC 128 or whatever it's called. Like we don't know what the fuck that's gonna do. And like
BP 157.
yeah, yeah.
BC 128.
It's one of them ones. You know, we just like, I don't know, just like even for me, like when I first went on GLP-1, I was working with a company. I was open about the fact that they were giving me a commission, but I was looking at it the sense of like people who come to me most of the time were people who like had it through insurance, lost it, and then couldn't get it anymore. So I was like, hey, this is an option for you. Or people who are like, I'm really struggling. This makes seem like an option. And I would ask them relentless questions to the point where like people I was working for were like, dude, like you're asking, like if you're not selling, and I'm like, no, like sorry, like I care more about making sure the people I'm getting to you are qualified than I do selling. And eventually I just cut off that partnership because I just like, it just doesn't align with, if you're not going to let me do it the way I want to, then it just doesn't align with me. And I think there's a lot of people who make like GLP-1s their entire identity and focus now on social media.
Yeah.
And listen, I think it's an amazing drug. It's going to save a lot of lives, but it's still in like an area where we don't know a lot. And so that's even for me, like I still talk about it, but it's like in a sense of like always reminding people, like if you can do this naturally, if you're not focusing on this mental stuff, like that's why I'm shifting from like the GLP-1 to like the mentality stuff being my main focus on social is because it's making the biggest difference. And I think it's going to make the biggest difference for so many people before anything else is need. You know, some people are still going to need other stuff. Like that's just the reality. We're not all going to be able to just fix ourselves. I would love that, but in the world, you know, we live in a real world. But at the end of the day, like I just want people to make the progress in their health in the healthiest way, in the best way, in the longest sustaining way possible for them. And what that looks like is going to be very different for person to person. And we just lose that in the conversation and in the struggle and in the wanting to be sponsored by different things and wanting to work with this company and wanting to be on this stage. And like, it's like, dude, like everyone follows these people. And in the real world, like it's going to be so different from what your journey looks like. Even for me, when I was back on social media before, like I would tell people like, you're not going to have the same journey as me. Like you don't have the ability to just go into the gym for 6 hours a day and be like your life, you know? And now I don't have that.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly way better place than I am now than I was then because I'm in the time that I do have, I'm focusing it heavily on the stuff that's improving my life.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you know, hopefully I talk about all this shit and in, you know, a couple months here, you guys will see some major change. No, I know it's going to happen, but you know, it'd be funny. Just like talk about this. He's like, oh, fuck. He didn't do it. Shit.
That's not the case. That won't be the case.
100% not.
Andrew, do you have one of those clips I sent you in the text thread between Eric was in there as well. I think if you play that first clip, it'd be cool to kind of hear him talk about that a little bit. You know, it's just interesting before you play this clip, how well these crappy foods, these comfort foods work. You know, they really do. Like we could just say, oh, well, it's just like a couple seconds and, you know, it's like you get this taste and it's kind of done with, but it does feel amazing. You know, you have this kind of thing in your head, you got this craving and it's like putting a key in a door. It kind of unlocks that craving that you had, and it sort of just it just calms you down. But then there's like kind of the regret and everything else that happens afterwards.
Yeah, you're talking about the initiative to get like everybody healthy, right? Like the high school kids. Is that the one?
Yeah, I think that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a clip. Yeah,
my bad. Let's go.
Yeah, it's on David Goggins' page. I think it was
Goggins.
To speak to the people of America about a subject which I believe to be most important, and that is the subject of physical fitness. And I speak not only as President of the United States, but also as a parent of 2 children who I hope will grow up with those qualities of vigor and energy which we identify with the best of America. This should be a matter of concern to us all. A country is as strong really as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor go hand in hand.
Ready up! Class 10 foot.
Nsima, can you, or Andrew, either one of you guys, can you read what David Goggins wrote? I'm not going to be able to see it.
Them Kennedys, runs in the family.
Yeah, right. Yeah, trying to keep people healthy.
Yeah,
but I know, like, you know, in some of what Goggins said on this this post that he put up was basically like these initiatives, they're not going to really ever happen again in the same way. because there are going to be too many people complaining and too many people whining about their kids having to participate in gym class or whatever it might be. And he basically just kind of goes on to say like learn about this stuff and save yourself.
Yeah.
And put the onus and put the responsibility on yourself. And I think that ties in to the Jocko Willink book that you read, and you were talking about how helpful that is. So yeah, I just want to get some of your thoughts on some of that. Can you see it?
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the span of 60 years, our standards have dropped so far. The USA now ranks in top 15 countries in the world in terms of the obesity rate. Our low standards are reflected in the poor mental and physical well-being of our citizens. This is not a political statement. This is a personal statement about prioritizing your physical health because it correlates and affects all aspects of your life. And by the way, David Goggins was very, very heavy before. So the decline is only gaining momentum. I can only imagine what things will look like 10 years from now, let alone 60. The days of programs like this being approved are long gone, so you need to figure it out for yourself. Stay hard. Rock hard.
I bought his book. I haven't read it yet, but
it was. I listened to the audio version because he reads it. And it's pretty good.
Yeah,
but yeah.
What do you want my thoughts on that?
Yeah, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah,
like you have a young kid, and
yeah. I mean, I definitely am. Like I said, prioritizing more of the just being healthy aspect more than the look a certain way, lift a certain amount of weights, stuff. Like even you guys, like I feel like a lot of your mindsets in the last 10 years have shifted drastically.
Totally different.
Yeah,
it's not about. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that it's cool to see like that being like everyone's kind of like tuning in and being like, hey, wait a minute, we forgot the fundamentals here. you know, everyone's aiming for this like what's honestly a lot of the cases like out of reach goal, whereas like even just like here would be great for the majority. So I think just focusing back into like, unfortunately, healthy stuff always gets tied into some stuff that's pseudoscience. But like I said, like I think when everyone uses some, critical thinking and goes, what works for me, what works best for my family, and if that's getting you to a healthier place and a goal that's right for you, I think that's all that matters, right? So I think going back to those fundamentals, which I think kind of is the main thing he's talking about, is like, it's like our standard fundamentals is like shifted, and all of a sudden like things are made to be bad that don't really have a reason to be bad, and then we're missing out on some key aspects. So I think just when it comes back to what we've been talking about, like I think people are starting to realize, and so the more I think content, honestly, social media has a huge aspect on that too, just because, what's put out still, like even if I go back to when I was like, really on social, it's different things, but similar vibe. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's not the same, but then you start to see messaging and certain things, you're like, this is the same. It's just like it's a different, here you go. But a lot of it has not adjusted. And, back again, like to John, my good friend, like he spent a lot of years, like kind of like, making, being there for like his community, being overweight community, and like some of the people that come after them and like say wrong things or whatever. And for a lot of times I was like, that I don't know if I agree with that kind of content, but it's like at the end of the day, like he's been doing that for how long? And, if he gets to impact and help people make some better choices, that's better than what the general public seem to be getting. And so I applaud like what he's been able to do. And it's all about, just not everyone you follow on social media has the answers. You know what I mean? And so when we just look back at it, like move more, eat healthier, that sounds basic, but like choose to like learn about that. If you don't know more than the basics, like choose to, and then include that mental aspect. And I think everyone could drastically improve where they're at.
What about navigating life as kind of being the outsider? So you said when you were younger and you were bigger, you were the outsider because you were the bigger kid and everybody.
There was other reasons, but
okay. Well, no, that's fine. You're still the outsider. Then now in 2024, almost 25, if you're eating healthy, you're making these swaps, you're doing, exercise, you're moving, getting sunlight, you're now kind of like the outsider, it seems like, right? Because like people look at me and they're like, what do you mean you don't really eat fast food anymore? It's like, everybody eats that. How come you don't? So what's that like for you now?
Honestly, it's tough because like now, like just the majority of people I surround myself with, like that's just the norm.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge huge, you know, that's life-changing for some people. Like who you are with, like I know it's cliche, but like who you're with is who you are. Like the 5 people, you know, it's the sum of you. So I don't deal with a lot of that. Like, what do you mean anymore? Unless I go on, a lot of times, sometimes when I'll go on like a date or something like that, they'll be like, what? Why don't you get this? I'm like, don't want it.
I don't eat that way.
You get whole milk in your coffee? Who drinks whole milk anymore? And I'm like, I didn't for years and years and years, and now I love it. Yeah, I legit was oat milk for like 7 years straight. I never, like, I was just like, milk's not for me. It's gross.
Rough time period you went through.
He's like, oh, you have an oat milk drinker on this podcast? What are you doing?
And that's all the time we got.
What the let's turn this off.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't have to deal with a lot of that. But yeah, I just think that people should just be aware of who they're around, you know? And that's the thing with weight loss too, is like it does affect relationships 100%. And it actually, if you look into it, it's people who have weight loss surgery, for example, if their partner is a person who has a different lifestyle, the divorce rate is like insane. I don't know if you guys ever
heard that.
Yeah, like it's like 80% or something like that.
Well, we definitely have heard of couples sabotaging each other and stuff like that too. One person starts to lose weight. Yeah. The other one starts to get worried about like where their interests are starting to lie, you know, and where they're spending their time and so on. Yeah.
But yeah, specifically with weight loss surgery, just because it's a direct, like you can measure it because people will most likely lose the weight. Yeah. Those relationships don't commonly last because, you know, who you are with and what, and for me, like I know that the future partner I have, like I know that they have to have a active, healthier lifestyle. Because if I am around someone who's like, let's just stay in, let's just order a pizza, like I'm gonna be like, let's do it. Yeah.
That's real, dog.
So I know that I can't do that for me. You know, so setting your standards and not veering from them is super important. So when people or your friends or family, because those are people who do it, the ones that you can talk to nicely and change, sweet. But the ones that don't, like you got to make a decision. That's tough too, because sometimes it's close. So you just have to adjust.
Yeah.
I always say like, you know, instead of like, it's hard not to get defensive, but just like treating it like, oh yeah, like just kind of like playing it off like it's nothing. Like then people just kind of go like, oh, okay. Like, there's different, I think I've done a podcast talking about that of like things you can do, like specific tools.
I know you guys enjoyed this episode. Check out this one right here about the effortless diet. If you're trying to get in better shape and you don't want to go through the hassle of tracking every single thing, we talk about the habits and concepts in this podcast here. So check it out. Click it.